Hi guys, this is IGCSE O-Level Chemistry, paper 22, November 2016, question 11. A student sets up a number of simple cells by putting strips of two different metals into dilute sulfuric acid. Which cell produces the highest voltage? So the metals we have are copper, magnesium, copper, zinc, iron, copper, and magnesium and zinc. So according to the reactivity series, the most reactive metal starts with potassium, then sodium, then calcium, then magnesium, then aluminum, then zinc, then iron, then lead, then hydrogen, then copper, then silver, then gold, and then platinum. So we would select the metals with the greatest difference in reactivity to produce the highest voltage. So for the first one, copper and magnesium, we have a very large difference in reactivity between copper and magnesium. Next, we have copper and zinc. Copper and zinc also has a difference between their reactivities, but it is lesser than the difference between magnesium and copper. The third one is iron and copper. Iron and copper has an even lesser difference than copper and zinc. And the last one, magnesium and zinc. Magnesium and zinc also has a very small difference compared to all the others. Therefore, the largest difference is the difference between magnesium and copper, which makes option A the correct option for this question. Question 12. Which experiment is the most exothermic? So in order for a reaction to be exothermic, its final temperature must be greater than its initial temperature. So for A, the final temperature is less than the initial temperature, so it is an endothermic reaction. B is an exothermic reaction because the final temperature is greater than the initial temperature. C is again an endothermic reaction because the final temperature is lesser than the initial temperature, and D is exothermic because the final temperature is greater than the initial temperature. Now, for B, the difference in temperatures would be 32 minus 20, which would give us a difference of 12. And since the units are degree Celsius, so we would use degree Celsius here. And for D, we would have 34 minus 25, giving us a difference of 9 degrees Celsius. So the experiment that is the most exothermic is the one with the greatest temperature difference, that being 12 degrees Celsius, making option B the correct option for this question. Question 13. The energy level diagram for a reaction is shown. So this is an exothermic reaction because the energy level of products is lower than the energy level of reactants. So which row is correct? So we will decide first the sign of the enthalpy change. Since the products are at a lower energy level than the reactants, the sign of the enthalpy change would be negative. So this eliminates options B and C. Overall energy change. Now the overall energy change is exothermic because the level of product, the energy level of product is lower than the energy level of reactants. So that is there in both the remaining options. And the sign for the activation energy, we must remember that activation energy is the energy required or the minimum energy required for a reaction to occur. Since it is the energy required, activation energy will always have a positive sign and it will never have a negative sign, eliminating option A and making option D the correct option for this question. Question 14. Zinc granules are reacted with excess dilute hydrochloric acid. So hydrochloric acid is in excess. So zinc granules are the limiting reactants. The volume of hydrogen gas given off is measured at different times. The results are shown on the graph labeled experiment 1. The result for a second experiment are also shown on the graph labeled experiment 2. Which change to the condition was made in experiment 2? So the volume of hydrogen gas collected is the same in experiment 2. That means HCl is still in excess. However, the time taken for the gas to be collected in experiment 2 is greater than the time taken in experiment 1, which means the reaction proceeded slowly. And the only reason the reaction can proceed slowly is if the concentration of HCl was lower, because of which the reaction would also slow down. So option A is The concentration of hydrochloric acid was decreased. Yes, this is what we just figured out. The size of the zinc granules was decreased. If the size of the zinc granules was decreased, then the reaction would have been faster because there would be greater exposed surface area. So this is not it. The surface area of zinc granule was increased, same as point B. If the size was decreased, the surface area would be increased. So this is not it. The temperature was increased. Had the temperature increased, the rate of reaction would be more quicker. Then the dotted line would be above the line for experiment 1, not below. So this is not it either. Therefore, option A is the correct option for this question. Question 15. In an experiment, nitric acid is added to excess marble chips and the volume of carbon dioxide formed is measured. The experiment is repeated using smaller marble chips. All other conditions remain the same. Which statement about the second experiment is correct? So now, since smaller marble chips are used, the collisions are more frequent with higher energy? No, there is no change in energy. The collisions are more frequent, yes, but not with higher energy, with the same energy. So B says collisions are more frequent. This is correct with and the same energy. Yes, because there is no change in energy if the size of the marble chips is decreased. The collisions are the same. No, they are not the same. They are more frequent. And the same energy. Energy is the same. The collisions are the same. No, the collisions are more frequent and higher energy. No, it will have the same energy. Therefore, the correct option for this question is option B. Question 16. At 400 degrees Celsius, the reaction between hydrogen and iodine reaches an equilibrium. The reaction is exothermic. Which change in condition would increase the percentage of hydrogen iodide in the equilibrium? That means the equilibrium will shift forward. A decrease in pressure. A decrease in pressure will have no effect because the number of moles of reactants and products are the same. So a change in pressure has no effect on such equilibrium. So this is not it. A decrease in temperature. Since the forward reaction is exothermic, a decrease in temperature will favor the exothermic side of the reaction. That means the equilibrium will shift forward, increasing the yield of the product, which is hydrogen iodide. So this is correct. An increase in pressure. An increase in pressure will also have no effect since the number of moles of reactants and products are the same. An increase in temperature. Since this reaction is exothermic, an increase in temperature will favor the endothermic side of the reaction, which is the left side. Therefore, the equilibrium will cause the percentage of hydrogen iodide to decrease. So this is incorrect. Therefore, the correct option for this question is option B. Question 17. Chromium forms the compound chromium 3 sulfate. What does the 3 represent? The charge on a sulfate ion? No. The number of chromium ions combined with one sulfate ion? No. The number of sulfate ions combined with one chromium ion? No. The oxidation state of chromium? Yes. The number written next to the cation in brackets is always the charge of the cation. So, chromium 3 sulfate means it contains the Cr3 positive ion. And since sulfate has an SO4 2 minus ion, the formula of chromium sulfate would be Cr2SO4 thrice. And according to this, option B said the number of chromium ions combined with one sulfate ion is 3. That is incorrect. And option C says the number of sulfate ions combined with one chromium ion is also incorrect because there are 3 sulfate ions combined to 2 chromium ions. Therefore, the correct option for this question is option D. Question 18. Germanium oxide is a white powder. Germanium oxide reacts with concentrated hydrochloric acid. Germanium oxide reacts with concentrated aqueous sodium hydroxide. Germanium oxide does not dissolve when added to water. Which type of oxide is germanium oxide? Since it reacts with both acids and bases, it is an amphoteric oxide. Therefore, option B is the correct option for this question. Question 19. Hydrogen chloride gas reacts with water to produce an acidic solution. The equation for the reaction is shown. Which statement describes what happens during the reaction? The chloride ion is formed by accepting an electron from water. No, the chloride ion is formed by donating a proton to water. So this is incorrect. The proton here being the H positive ion. The hydrogen chloride loses an electron to form chloride ion. No, it loses a proton, which is the H positive ion. The water accepts a proton from the hydrogen chloride. Yes, it accepts the H positive ions from hydrogen chloride. This is correct. The water donates a proton to hydrogen chloride. No, water is accepting the H positive ion, not donating an H positive ion. Here, proton refers to the H positive ion. So, H positive ion is being accepted by water. Therefore, option C is the correct option for this question. Question 20. The apparatus shown is used to prepare aqueous copper to sulfate. So we add solid X to a liquid Y and we heat it and we stir it. Then we filter it. Excess of solid X is removed. That means solid X is insoluble. And we obtain copper to sulfate. That means solid X will contain copper ions and liquid Y would contain sulfate ions. So what are X and Y? X is not copper metal. X is an insoluble salt of copper. So copper chloride is soluble. Copper oxide is insoluble and sulfur is not copper. So, or a copper ion. So this is incorrect. So we have already identified the correct option, but let's look at Y as well. So Y is a solution of sulfate ions. So is it aqueous iron to sulfate? Iron to sulfate, if present, will not be displaced by copper. So that is not it. It's sulfuric acid. Yes, sulfuric acid will react with copper oxide, producing copper sulfate, and additional copper oxide can be filtered out. And the last one says aqueous copper to chloride. No, why should not contain copper? It should contain sulfate ions. Therefore, the correct option for this question is option C, because copper oxide is an insoluble salt which would react with sulfuric acid producing copper sulfate, which would be a soluble salt. A blue solution would be produced and the excess of copper oxide would remain in the solution, which can be filtered out and the two salts separated. Therefore, option C is the correct option for this question.